wants the issue of hostages held in Gaza at the front and centre of the world stage, and that he will be discussing this at a special UN Security Council session. Saar has announced that he will be departing to New York for a special UN session that he initiated on the issue of hostages. Saar has called for the international community to put the focus on the hostage situation. This comes as Hamas had released the video of Israeli hostage Evyatar David. In it, David, skeletally thin, is shown digging a hole that he says in the video is for his own grave. Let's listen in to what the Israeli Foreign Minister has had to say.
This past weekend, Hamas and Islamic Jihad cruelly released horrifying videos of our hostages, Evyatar David and Rom Broslavsky. The world witnessed their terrible condition, starved, tortured. Evyatar was forced to dig his own grave. The world saw the thick arm of the well-fed terrorist next to the starved and tortured Evyatar. I hadn't saw any UN declaration about the hostages. Maybe I missed something, so I want to be careful. But to the extent I followed, I hadn't seen one. So that gives you a hint, or more than a hint, about where the UN is stand. I mean, it's totally unbalanced. It's totally unfair. Unfortunately, I must say that. And it's not a coincidence that their voice is not heard.
Well, according to Israel, 50 hostages remain in Gaza, only 20 of whom are believed to be alive. Hamas has barred humanitarian organisations from having any kind of access to hostages, and families have little or no details of their conditions. That, of course, until a video like the shocking one that was released over the weekend comes into the public domain. Shruti Dasgupta, thank you for staying with us. Of course, the situation surrounding the war in Gaza is so polarising. There are so many calls from either side of the fence over the situation, the humanitarian situation that is here at play. Gideon Saar clearly stating here that more focus needs to be put on the hostages that are still being held. That video released over the weekend, of course, showing disturbing scenes, a hostage saying that he was digging his own grave. Do you think more discussion needs to be had about the 20 or so living hostages still being held and the bodies of those hostages still being held, of deceased hostages?
Absolutely. I'm very sure about what you're saying is absolutely correct, because, as I've said before, the videos that come out from Gaza about starvation are also made by Hamas, and the video of the Israeli Jew being starved is also coming out from Hamas. In the Gazan videos, they try and pretend as if the IDF is doing great crimes, and I'm not whitewashing their crimes, but I'm saying that they pretend that the crimes are much worse than probably on the ground, because as Gideon Saar in that video said, that the thick, brawny arm of the Hamas was visible for a microsecond there, and you could see that at least the Hamas are being well fed, even if Gazans are starving. So while Israel and the UN and the US to focus on the starving Gazans, they should also focus on the starving hostages and the healthy Hamas. These are two very big signals. Yes, it's obvious that when Gazans are going to be starved, so are the hostages, but the Hamas are still healthy and brawny and not starved out. And they have enough presence of mind to make a video like this, which would cause the ripples rise across Israel. So they're pretty politically aware that the hostage first scenario is something that can politically harm Netanyahu and his war on Gaza. So this is a very precise strike that was done, and the world needs to understand that the Hamas is not as innocent as they would like to claim all Gazans and Palestinians are. So they need to take a deeper look at the organization and the strings that they're trying to pull on the world scale.
Shruti, let's look at the situation. Of course, again, it is extremely divisive. But when does humanity win in this situation? Reports from groups, the UN, humanitarian groups, over 100 NGOs talking about the situation in Gaza for civilians. The situation with hostages being held. We know there have been protests, of course, in Israel. At what point does humanity take the lead in this and really push a potential deal towards peace? Because at the moment, it is an impasse. There is no further progress that has been made despite optimism. And seemingly the situation on both sides is not going to improve in the short term at least.
I completely agree with what you're saying. Humanity needs to win, and for humanitarian, we need to ensure that Hamas does not win. And that is my bottom line for this, that Hamas's victory, they have a few days ago put out a social media post saying that the recognition of Palestine as a state, as a country, various countries approving of Palestine as a nation is a fruit of the October attack. So they are accomplishing their agenda by playing out on the plight of Gazans. They are the ones who are starving Gazans by not surrendering arms. They are the ones who are holding the hostages. They are the ones who are killing the hostages, and they are the ones who are starving the hostages. So the humanity needs to ensure that Hamas is held accountable. Yes, hold IDF responsible for every irresponsible killing, but hold Hamas responsible more because they started this war. They started this war by attacking civilians who had no arms on them. So first attack the attacker, then go after the one who have been trying to defend and finally find a solution to a very long drawn war.
Shruti, very quickly before we move on, where does this leave Benjamin Netanyahu? Of course, protests within Israel from anti-government protesters calling for an immediate end to the war, hostage families continuing calls for work towards a ceasefire. This video is potentially going to stoke more questions. How do you see that playing out?
I see mounting pressure, if I'm not wrong. There a large group of Sachis have collected together and said that they want this war to end. There should be ceasefire and hostages should be put first. So Netanyahu is losing ground politically on his own land, and this war is becoming more and more a war of the coalition government led by Netanyahu rather than the people of Israel. So this, I understand that this is going to be very defeating. This video itself is very defeating to Netanyahu's progress as a politician in the coming years.
Shruti, stay with us again. We've got some further developments relating to the